Welcome to the Dug in a Pub podcast, where I share thoughts, stories, and conversations about my life and my journey post-suicide attempt.
I'd like to begin with a fact.
So pull up a stool and let's see if we can change the world.
I'd like to begin with a fact.
Hello and welcome to the Dug in a Pub podcast, episode 3. On today's episode, I'm going to talk to Brett about the words need and want. We're also going to talk about BrewDog, our favorite brewery and group of people. And then I have a short story about the first time I realized how false memories can be. So today I have Brett with me, who's my partner in life. And we wanted to talk about need and want because when we started dating, coming up on 8 years ago, it was actually one of the first real conversations we had about our relationship and where it was going. And, when my marriage ended, the reason I tried the bad thing is because I didn't understand the difference between need and want. And I thought I needed somebody in my life, that I was not complete without somebody, that I needed that. Everybody says, one and one make one in relationships. And I've come to realize just how bullshit that is. And what it really is you need to be complete yourself. And then when you get somebody else, they need to be complete. And then you're two people. And then one and one is two, which is, the way it should work. That's why she's here, because that was one of the first talks we had. Hopefully she'll talk at some point. There you go. Thanks. I hate for people to think I'm talking to myself in the closet again. So, I don't know what your thoughts are on the whole need-want thing. I know we've discussed it a bit, but, looking for other perspectives.
Yeah, I think, I went through a lot of the same things because I was recently separated, divorced when we met as well. And, I had spent so many years in a relationship where I was giving and diminishing myself to give parts of myself to other people. And I had felt after 10 years of that, or 15 years of that, 19 years of that, I felt like I was a shell of a person. I was not whole anymore. So I was on a struggle to find out how to become whole again. And one of my mantras when I got my first new apartment was I wasn't going to have, I started over with no belongings, no nothing. And I decided I wasn't going to buy anything and bring it home unless I needed it or loved it. And, the weekly trips to Target to go pick up stuff because it appealed to me in the moment stopped because I didn't need any of that. And I would often hold things in my hand and say, do I need this? Do I love this? And if I couldn't say yes to either question, it went back on the shelf. And so through that process, I came to terms with what I needed in my life to be happy and to be whole. And then when I started dating again, it kind of just extended that process. Do I need this in my life? Mm-hmm. Do I love this in my life? Or can I let it go?
Does it bring me joy?
Does it bring me joy? Exactly. There was a lot of that. And I thought it was fascinating when we first met that you were thinking along similar lines. I hadn't talked to a man who felt that way. So it was very appealing right from the start.
Well, you caught me at a very strange point in my life. I was truly reinventing myself and who I was and how I interacted with the world. And, I had never really dated before we had started dating. Everybody that I had been in relationships with was somebody I knew. When we met, that was actually dating. And I was dating some other people at the time. But, that whole need-want thing, there's a saying, and I'm probably going to mess it up, but, never need anything so much as its loss brings you pain. And I've told that to people, and they look at me like, oh, that's so sad. That's terrible. Why would you feel that way? And I'm like, I need you, is a terrible thing because that means without that, you're lacking. And if you weren't in my life, I'd be sad. I would be sad for quite some time. But I now understand that I am completely whole without you. When my wife left me, I felt less than whole, because that whole need thing, and romantic comedies do a terrible service to American
Oh, that's very
people.
true.
They teach that you need to need somebody. That's how you know you're in love, because you need them. To me, you know you're in love when you just want them all the time. It's a constant want, but understanding that if that person departs, you don't change.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the, never need something so much that its loss causes you pain. I'm not sure I like the word pain there. It's more that its loss diminishes you.
Yeah.
Because, if you want, yes, I want you in my life all the time, and we have this great relationship that we've built, and if you left tomorrow, there would be tremendous pain. But I also know very, very strongly that I would press on because I am a whole person in and of myself. I want you in my life. I would miss you tremendously, but I don't need to have you to get through my day. And you're right. It's very, very different from what romantic movies and romantic shows and even novels. I mean, classic romance novels are horrible. They're horrible.
Yep.
That is not what people should look for in love.
The whole need thing is dangerous. I think it's something people get lost and wrapped up in, that they need to have somebody in their life, and they get attached to somebody, and then they start needing them, and then when they don't interact with that person, they start to feel less, and they feel like they're not as much of a person when they're not with that person. And it's just, to me, it's just dangerous. And it's, like I've said before, word choice to me means so much. And the words you use can really affect everything. And that word need is another one of those words that I really try to analyze and look at and make sure what I have in my life that I want, and to try to never cross over into that I need this in my life. To me, I think that's the key, is if you have something and you lose it, if that changes you, is that where it becomes a need as opposed to a want? I'm not really sure where that definition line is, but
yeah, I think in modern society, it's hard to really find the line between need and want. We're taught all the time we need to have phones, we need to have computers, we need to have, healthy food, we need to have organic food, all these various things that really we don't need, we want them. And we build our lives in a way that they do become essential to the life we're living. I would be a very different person without my cell phone. But I think that when the need becomes a crutch, when it becomes pathologic, when it becomes something that makes you feel less whole without it, to me, that's kind of the defining point.
yeah.
I don't need expensive clothes. I can wear anything and be comfortable. So, yes, I need clothing, but I don't need designer clothes. I don't need new clothes every month.
Right.
I don't need 50 pairs of shoes. And in a relationship, it's, again, when you need someone, I've seen so many people in relationships that are needy relationships that they don't even really like the other person. They don't like to be around them. They're unhappy.
Yeah.
They fight a lot. They're frustrated because that person isn't doing what they want or need them to do. And I think that's one of the downsides of being needy in a relationship. And if you can find people who you want to be with because they're fun, because you enjoy sharing experiences together, you enjoy talking to them, you enjoy sometimes just sitting next to them in silence and feeling comfortable, that's very different from needing them.
Yeah, very much. So yeah, that's our brief conversation on need and want, and it's just one of those things that I've tried to be aware of. Are there things in my life I need, or are they things in life that I want? Be aware of how you relate to the objects and people in your life and the place that they have. So thanks, Brett, for having this chat with me.
Sure thing.
And that's our discussion about need and want. So just think about those words and how they fit with all the different things in your life. Thanks.
You should pause, because I was going to say hello and you didn't pause, and I didn't want to talk over you.
Talk over me.
Okay.
So I'm still here with Brett. We're going to have a change of topics here. We're going to talk about one of our favorite things, which is a brewery called BrewDog.
Yay!
Yeah, we both like beer. We like all sorts of beers and flavors. We're kind of flavor junkies. We love getting flights of beer. And we stumbled into BrewDog through their TV show back in, I think it was 2013. Since then, we've both have shares in the company. We visited the brewery in Columbus, Ohio. We've been to 14 different BrewDog locations now. There are like 75 or 80 across the world. But, yeah, one of the things that I like about BrewDog, and I'm going to put up a post. I actually wrote a love letter to BrewDog. I'm going to throw up on my blog to follow up this podcast. The beers that they make are amazing, and I've always been a big fan of IPAs. You know, they're really hoppy, intense flavor.
Not so much me.
No.
When we get flights, I drink the malty things and the fruity things and the wit beers, and Doug always goes for the heavy IPAs.
I went to BrewDog first and had their beers, and was really, really impressed and very happy, because at that point I'd already given them a bunch of money, and because I like to do things backwards, but. So I brought home, did I bring home beer, or did we go out there to have your first beers?
I think you brought some home.
Yeah.
You brought home some Elvis juice and some Hazy Jane.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I don't, it's not the bitter taste of IPAs that set me off. It's the bitter feeling on my tongue. You know, after I drink it, my tongue is kind of numb and dry, and I don't care for that at all. And I used to joke that, you know, a lot of the IPAs that Doug really liked were, to me, like licking a dandelion stem.
Tongue
just
scrapers.
Really, really bitter. Or the hop odor was so intense that they reminded me of tomcat urine. So I just had a very hard time, and I liked the hop flavor of the real mild IPAs that I would find now and then, but the vast majority of them I didn't care for at all. And he brought home Elvis juice and Hazy Jane from the first trip, and I was blown away.
Yeah, the Elvis juice is a grapefruit flavor to it, and the Hazy Jane, I don't know, it's just a really yummy IPA. It might be my favorite BrewDog, my everyday BrewDog beer. I mean, they have other beers I like more, but, you know, you can't drink a 14% Radio Zombie every day. Hazy Jane I could, especially with orange juice in the morning for a mimosa.
Yeah, they're both. I mean, they have all the hop flavor. They have the grapefruit and the citrus and the pininess and all the flavors there, but none of that tongue numbing after effect. And the Elvis juice is a little more citrusy. The Hazy Jane is probably a little more fruity and light. Mm-hmm. But yeah, both just absolutely incredible. And I was like, any brewery that can make two different hoppy beers that I can drink and really enjoy, I need to learn more about them.
Yeah, and we've had some other crazy hoppy beers. There's one out there, it's called the Palate Wrecker. And when you make a beer, they have these international bittering units, which is calculated by the ingredients. It's not like they put it in a slide and measure what the bitterness is. But that one was listed out as 150 IBU. And I'd liken that to, you know, when you eat spicy food, after the first couple of bites, all you have in your mouth is that spice, and then the flavor kind of goes away because all you have is the burn. And that's the problem with some of the hoppy beers. It seemed like craft brewers, when they couldn't make a good beer, they would just over-hop it to compensate for the lack of flavor in the beer. So that was the real big thing. Oh, this thing's got 150 IBUs or 200 IBUs. And I think I've read the human tongue, once you get over 100 IBUs, the difference in what you can perceive drops off radically. So the difference between 100 IBU and 150 is very small.
And they're all unpleasant.
Well, that's your opinion. But, you know, that's the thing that BrewDog has done. To me, they're the first brewery that's done this very, very well. is take those really hoppy beers, those high IBU beers, and make them very, very drinkable. Because a lot of those high IBU beers, you drink it and one glass and your taste buds are shot, and it's just, yeah, it starts to be unpleasant, like eating, like drinking a glass of sriracha. It's too much and it's overwhelming and it gets overdone.
But then, since we've gone back to BrewDog and gone to visiting other bars, I mean, it's not just the IPAs that they do incredibly well. I think one of my favorite beers from them right now is Jet Black Heart, which is a stout.
Yeah, it's a stout.
And when we get it, it comes in nitro cans.
Nitro cans, yeah.
And it's creamy and it's sweet and it's dark and it's just, it's so delicious. It is a wonderful, a lot of times stouts are something that they're very heavy, they're very filling. This one is something that you could drink multiples of them back to back and not be overwhelmed by how heavy or rich it was. There's a richness there, but it's not overpowering, and the flavor is amazing.
It's funny, since drinking these hoppy beers from BrewDog, Brett's flavor profile has changed so much. She now will order. Remember the first time she ordered a double IPA? I looked at her, I'm like, "Who are you, and what did you do with Brett?" When you start learning a new flavor, like I used to never be able to drink coffee stouts because I don't drink coffee. I don't like coffee. But once I started to learn to put the coffee taste away and taste the rest of the beer, now I'm drinking more of those. And I think that's what the BrewDog beers and the hoppiness did for Brett, is they let her understand that you could have a hoppy beer and have it be tasty and not unpleasant with that tongue-scraping finish.
Now, that said, there are still quite a few IPAs I can't drink. I sip them and I go, nope, don't want that one, and I give it to Doug.
And then I win.
But yeah, my palate has expanded dramatically because of the impact of these BrewDog beers. And in talking to some of the staff at the various bars, it sounds like a lot of it is from dry hopping rather than throwing the hops into the mix and cooking them for hours and hours and hours, so they release the lighter molecules that give it flavor rather than the more intense terpenes, I believe, that cause the bitterness.
Yeah. We've gone all in on the BrewDog thing. We've met friends through BrewDog who are now as close to family as I can imagine. But I'm sure you'll hear me and possibly us talk about BrewDog more. I know.
I also just want to add that, James Watt and Martin Dickey, we've got the chance to meet them a couple of times, and they are the most down-to-earth, most, just wonderful guys. We go to BrewDog events or bars, and if they're there, they walk around, they ask people, what do you think? Do you have any ideas about what we could do differently? Which is your favorite beer? And they're really approachable and good guys. And the company stands for amazing things. So they don't just have good beer.
And these are two guys running a company with 1,500 employees, 1,600 employees worldwide. It's going to probably do about $3 billion in business this year, and they will literally go talk to their customers. We were talking to Martin in February out in Ohio, and he reached for his phone, and I'm like, "Oh, we're done." He's thrown the flag, and then he asked me to repeat what I said, and so he could take notes. And I was like, "He's taking notes." I mean, I don't know any other company that size where the owners are that involved in the day-to-day operations. And it's like that the employees are completely invested in the company, at least all the ones that we've met. The equity punks, which is what we are, when you buy equity in a company, which is it was like $50 a share, you become an equity punk, which means you actually have ownership in the company. Now, the odds of you making money back on that are slim to nil.
Except you get discounts.
Yeah, you get, if you get enough shares, you get a 10% discount. I have a tattoo, so I get an extra 20% off of that, which gets you 28.
We're big fans.
But the company donates 20% of their profits every year to charity, 10% directed by the equity punks, 10% directed by the employees. They have paternity leave. If you buy a pet, you get a week off to get your pet acclimated to your house. All their bars are dog friendly. I should say as far as I know, they're all dog friendly. A lot of them actually have dog parks where available. Yeah, you'll probably hear me talk about BrewDog a lot. Some of my favorite people work there. Some of my absolute favorite beers. I think I've had close to 80 different BrewDog beers now, which is the most I've ever had from any brewery. So yeah, and then like I said, I wrote a love letter to BrewDog that I'm going to throw up on the blog. I wanted to bring Brett in because talk about how BrewDog changed her approaches to beer, and it completely changed her palate, tasting a good IPA made well.
They have also impacted my appreciation of sours. They have an Overworks sour facility, and one of the first ones I tasted from Overworks was actually a carrot sour that was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a lot more open.
Carrot and ginger.
A lot more open to sour beers now than I used to be.
But well, I think that's enough for our BrewDog for today, because I'm sure it'll be a topic to be revisited. But thanks for listening. I spend a lot of time thinking about how the brain works and the mind works. One of the things that comes into that a lot is memories. And one of the first times I realized just how false memories could be, or misleading, or just downright lies. I think I was 14, and I was sitting in Brookfield Central High School cafeteria in the morning, because I always got there early. And I was thinking about this time when I was a kid. I must have been 4 or 5. And I was down the street from our house in Milwaukee on 63rd and Carmen. And I had Hot Wheels, and they turned. When you rolled them, they didn't go straight. So I was smashing them with rocks. Take them to the wrecking yard kind of thing, I think is what I was thinking. And so I'm smashing them with a big rock, and all of a sudden this kid threw a rock at me, hit me in the head, and I started bleeding. I run home, there's blood pouring down my face, because, head wounds bleed. And it was right on my forehead, right above one of my eyebrows, I believe. So there's blood just pouring down my face. I remember being thrown in the back of the car. I have a memory of looking up at the doctor standing above me, putting a stitch or two in. So that's what I thought, that this kid threw a rock at me, and I'm sure he got in trouble. And that day I was sitting in my high school in the morning, I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I had the image of me holding the rock, a big rock, over my head, and it fell out of my hands, and it scraped my forehead on the way down. And I had that realization that that's what had happened. I finally understood that there was no kid that threw a rock at me, that was absolutely a false memory. And I had dropped a rock on my own head. And man, that was a really unsettling moment. I'm just sitting there going, holy crap, this is a memory I've had for, 8 years or so. And to completely understand that it was false was really a revelation. And ever since then, there are things in my life. We recently ran into some friends about 2 years ago. And I said, remember back when, like 15 years ago or 20 years ago when we used to go and do these things, did I actually wear, paisley tights under ripped jeans? And he said, yeah. I said, okay, good. Because, I questioned so many of my memories now from my past. Because they've found, and I'll try to find an article or two to link on the corresponding blog post with this. But they have found that every time you recall something from your memory, you're actually rewriting that memory. So every time you think about it, there's a fair chance you're going to change it a little bit. And they've also found how easy it is to give people false memories. There's a show, guy that does Vsauce, was it Michael? And a show called Minefield. And he does that. He has a show or an episode where he gets these people to remember going on a hot air balloon ride when they never did. And there are people who are like, oh yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, we went up and, they did this thing and it never happened. But by presenting it the right way and with just enough fact and just enough meat behind it, their brain took all these little parts of every other thing they've experienced and then constructed a scene or a movie in their head of this memory that never happened. So you just got to be careful out there when you start to go, oh yeah, I remember when that happened, and I remember this. And like Brett and her brother, they have completely different memories of a lot of moments in their childhoods, and they're working on trying to reconcile which is the, I don't want to say right one, but try to reconcile the differences between their viewpoints on those memories. They say eyewitnesses are pretty much useless. Two people can see the same car accident and they'll have different stories about how it happened. A lot of it can depend on how the questions about what they saw were asked. And it's just amazing how their brain works and how memories work. And I've been very careful since then, when I have a memory, to try to not put too much weight behind it unless I've had it, independently verified by a panel of experts. Because the last thing I want to do is have a memory that I think is real be false and have it lead me down a path that I shouldn't be in, or that isn't relevant to, my existence or a conversation or something, because that memory I have is actually false and not real. So yeah, that was the first time I realized that you can have memories and they can be completely false and completely wrong and completely fabricated. What an amazingly powerful and scary and wonderful thing the mind is. How the mind can do that to itself. The ego does that. The ego wants to have things always be the way it wants. So the ego helps rewrite these memories. So over time, we remember ourselves possibly in a more positive light, or we start to eliminate the things we don't want to remember, which isn't a bad thing. There are some things in life, you don't want to remember, you don't want to have there. And sometimes it's good to be able to rewrite your memories, to take out the crap, and to replace the crap either with nothing or with some better things, to spin it so it fits better, so it's less painful, so it's more helpful. So yeah, that's what I wanted to close this podcast out with, was just be careful with memories. They can be false, and the brain is an amazing thing. If we had any idea how it worked, we'd be dangerous. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of the Dug in a Pub podcast. And thanks to Brett for joining me and contributing. I'm sure I will have you back on. You're just a joy to talk to. Next episode is going to be a little different too. I interviewed Jason Rogers, who runs Fez-O-Rama.com. For those of you who know me, you've seen the pictures of me and my fezzes. He's the guy who makes those fezzes. So we had about a 35-40 minute conversation about how I got into making fezzes and, this niche product that he does. So that's pretty much going to be all of episode 4. Working on some other interviews. I have a couple of musicians lined up I'm going to talk to, and I'm going to talk about fear and love in episode 5, and see if I can find a good story to go along with that. So again, thanks for listening. Please ask me questions. You can find my contact information on duginapub.com. Send me questions, send me comments. Spread the word. Tell people this podcast is out there. I think together, if we all gang up, we can change the world and make it a better place. So thanks for coming.